To be present, we must be intentional, and to bear fruit, we must feed the soul. You're listening to Pause, Sip, and Ponder. One. Hello, Ponders. Welcome back to another episode of Pause, Sip, and Ponder. Thank you for being here. Happy almost peak of spring. The weather's really nice today, and I think that gets everyone in a really good mood. I'm just hopeful, I think, and spring always brings such positive and hopeful vibes in our day and our lives, and so I hope all is well. We've been really busy on this end, but if you're new here, Pause, Sip, and Ponder is a podcast where we talk about everything and anything in the aim to give you some encouragement, some insight, where we learn together, grow together, and we're just some people just trying to figure it out. And I think there's just some comfort in knowing that we all are still figuring it out. And so I have one of the best people in my life. I have my friend Eric here with me, and I'll introduce him in a bit, and just kind of let you guys know how we know each other and who Eric is to me. And this is our second episode together. So the last time we had a podcast was back in 2019. He was one of my very first guest. He was actually, when I talk about like the origins of Pause, Sip, and Ponder, he's definitely in it, because he was one of the first people I interacted with straight after high school and then going to college. Coffee Republic was the spot of where this all happened, and we had such great conversations up to this day. I feel like our relationship, and you've mentioned this before, but I think I just kind of changed how it was, but you talked about like main character and side character, and I think we're like the best side characters in other people's lives. Like, I feel like we both don't really see ourselves as the main character all the time. We're always, just really down to serve and be there for people, and give any type of wisdom that we have. And he's definitely been that type of person in my life. He's been so supportive. He's been to pretty much every birthday, small gathering, and he's just a real one. He's an OG, so I'm really grateful to have you once again, Eric. And so I think I really wanted to just catch up on how life's been since 2019, which is, I'm sure, a lot, and it's pretty general, but my intention of this podcast is to really, we first talked about success and failure, and what that means to us, and also success, and what we've learned along the way. And I think we've both had quite some change, but also when I was listening back to our podcast, our first one, a lot of it has stayed the same in terms of what we valued, what we were, I guess, like our values and like our intentions and that stuff. So yeah, but before we get into that, how are you, Eric?
Doing just fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on your podcast again.
I know. It's
all
like
these
long
years.
Overdue. I mean, we would have like podcasts, but in person, like no mic, no camera. So, I think everything will go well. I went back to the old podcast, and then I wrote down some things that you can let me know if they still resonate with you, and just like some thoughts of
sure.
Any reflections. Okay, so I did this 4 years ago, and I asked you what you did at the time.
Oh my gosh.
And you responded with, well, I think I just explained to people that I have a background in everything, and so you're in a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. Is that still...
I mean, I do have a couple of mainstay things that I do right now, but I'm always working on a different project,
right.
Yes. At one point or another. Yeah.
Yes.
For sure. So yeah, it's more, it is way more defined than it was back then, but it's still largely, just kind of, I work to keep things interesting, like, because a project is interesting to me or whatever. And, it's kind of, think of, I don't know if you ever played a lot of video games, but I hate to say, like, completing all the side quests and everything.
Sure.
That's how I treat
That's
a lot
so
of
cool.
that's how I treat a lot of things. Yeah. In a
Yeah, I
sense.
don't play games, but I do see it in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mini games, yeah, for sure. You also at the time did IGTV videos when it
Oh
was a
yeah,
thing.
that's right.
When that-
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
RIP, we no longer have IGTV. What do you
Yeah.
have? Reels? Wow.
Reels, yeah.
Isn't it so interesting? Like I guess they were testing it out, right? And
Right.
that's when it was longer, right? How long were IGTV videos back then? Was it like an hour or something, or less?
You had to.
Oh, a minute.
Yeah, it was still very short. Like, if you like hit a certain mark, like I don't know, if you had like the blue check mark or something like that,
Yeah.
like they would extend it for like 2 or 3, 5 minutes or something like that. Like,
Dang.
if you were the freaking man, you could get like 10 minutes. Like it was.
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh.
IGTV, I totally forgot about that.
Wow. And then just now, like, I mean, you do have the option to have way longer. I guess when you're live, you can post, and it'll be like for an hour long if you wanted.
Right.
And now we
Yeah.
have reels that are literally, I think it's like a minute and 15 seconds max. It's just interesting how like Instagram has evolved and kind of changed, and like, yeah, really weird, but cool. What do you remember what your intentions were behind those videos?
Oh,
Because I know you were
man.
just starting at the time.
Oh, cause,
Yeah.
at that time I was working in social media marketing, so it was, yeah. So that was a part of my experimenting with the social media platforms. I was focusing more so on Instagram. So the intention was the end game was to help other businesses with their social media and so on and so forth. Now, I couldn't do that if I didn't understand it as a user. So I was just trying to make content so that I could understand the platform a little bit better. So at the time, I was just, you just talk about stuff, whether, again, journaling is a big thing for us and
Yes,
everything. So
yes.
a lot of that would, instead of a journal entry, I would just, throw that onto a IGTV or something like
miss
that.
those.
I only did a handful of them.
Yeah.
But
They were
yeah,
good. They were
yeah.
good at that time, and then COVID hit, I think, not too long
Yeah,
after that.
yeah, that's
so.
right. That's right. Yeah, and then that was like a whole different thing. That was
Yes.
that being a
Wow.
whole another thing.
Yeah, I mean, I always find your like stories so so interesting and funny. Like you're just like there and you're just observing everything around you. You're like,
Yeah,
how did I end up here? Like, but it's just such real. It's like the in between moments, that not a lot of people share
Sure.
about, and that stuff is really relatable,
I think for me, like when it comes to social media, I always try to use social media in the kind of the juxtaposition of what we know social media as,
Yeah.
which is, everybody has a curated version of their life on social media. Like it's always the highlights and everything, right? Excuse me. So like whenever I post, like they're always funny or whatever, because that's how I see my life. Like all the uninteresting moments, all the still moments, when nothing is happening, or I find myself like at a random networking event or party, or the intrusive thoughts that go on in your head, like, I'm going to this networking event, I'm dressed up in a suit and tie and everything, I look good, I look like I know I look professional, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah,
That's that's the reality of
Yes.
and just funny things like that. So like I told one of my friends, like, it's I mean, it's such a small thing, but I like to think that somebody like who would watch my stories when they come and meet me, and I'm exactly that person.
That's
So,
so good.
yeah, but
it's really refreshing, because like you said, it's just a bunch of highlights on Instagram,
Yeah.
and so it's really refreshing and nice to see. I guess someone who doesn't have it all together, which is, I think, majority reality.
Right.
So,
All of us, like I said, all of us are just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Changing our community and the world, just through
Yeah,
little
yeah.
things like that,
It's also just good for like you're thinking of other people, and you're like, no, they're normal people that screw up too, you know, like, and that have boring moments and all that stuff.
Also in the podcast, you had mentioned that we both had problems of stuttering. Do you still have
All the
problems?
time. All the time. I'm stuttering now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, cause it's a catch-22, cause once I realize it, like it makes me more self-conscious about it, so I'm more likely to stutter more.
Sure.
So then you'll start to notice me taking more pauses and intentionally speaking slower, and that's my defense against
Honestly,
it.
dude.
So like, but
Yeah.
only I'm thinking about that.
Sure.
You probably don't notice.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like I'm doing that internally, so it's
Well, you're doing it well, because I honestly like envy people. Like, I'm trying to learn that myself, where it's okay to take pauses
yeah.
when you're talking. I feel like I can go on and on and on, and then I'll like lose track of what I'm saying, just trying to like, depending who I'm in front of, you know, just trying to make a certain point or like get my idea across. But it's really nice to just like, you know, have that moment of pause, because that
Sure.
can actually create more impact, you know, more emotional, I guess, impact when you're talking to someone. And yeah.
Honestly, it's nice to have those pauses. You know, sometimes having those pauses, you give up another person room to take a turn speaking, and then you know, and then you get more out of the conversation, because you know you're getting to hear more about what that person's thinking about their life or whatever they're doing, at the cost of I don't have to talk in this moment. You know, it's like, oftentimes, right?
Wow, that's so funny. Yeah, and also like when you have those, I guess, those moments, that pause, it helps you like really be intentional with what you're saying.
Yes.
You know, being intentional with what you're saying, because sometimes we be saying stuff and it's just like,
It's just
is that really me? Like, or was I pretending to be something? And you know, so well, I take that from you. So you know, even if you may see it as an insecurity, I firmly try to do that more. So let's go back to our thoughts, our perspectives, our experiences since our first podcast about failure. So broad, I know that, but I'll say what you said, and maybe we can add from there.
okay.
People fear the consequences of failure, and you really have to ask yourself, what are you actually scared of? So, do those words still resonate, or is that, if someone asked you about your take on failure, is that what you would say? Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, largely the same. You know, there was this. I don't remember. It was some old Greek philosopher. He had this exercise where I think he was a rich man. He was a senator or whatever it is. So he was a very well-to-do kind of guy. And one of the exercises that he would do was like he would go out into the streets and he would put on like these tattered robes and everything. Like, you know, everything is like, you know he's wearing like these. You know, it would be like somebody who was like wearing Louis Vuitton, and then he just like came out with like a shirt from Walmart with holes in it and everything. And so, you know, when he would think to himself, you know, if he lost everything, he'd be like, is this it? Is this what I had feared all of this time? You know, so having confidence in like, let's say like whatever it is that your job, like having fear in something, you know, fear of failure or whatever it is, it's often what makes people very not confident about, you know, whether it's going out talking to people, trying to start a conversation, want to talk to that girl or that guy or whatever it is, your job, right? It's that confidence, people that are confident, it's not that they're not it's not that they're not afraid of failure. It's just that they have a more healthy relationship with failure.
Yes.
So when that does happen, like, you just kind of don't care about it. Like for instance, you know, I could go on the street and ask a girl out or something like that, or try to like chat her up or whatever, and maybe she's like rude to me back or something like that, which has happened on more than a couple.
I was gonna say, I want to see that.
It's but yeah, I mean, it didn't hurt me. Like, it's a rude word doesn't scathe me. It's most of the people that you come across with are strangers. If you don't get that job at that interview, I mean, there's plenty of jobs out there. There are lots of different opportunities, and
Right.
yeah. So it's about your relationship with failure, but to add a caveat to it, though, and this was something that I actually heard recently. It was some it was a YouTuber. He's like a psychologist or psychotherapist or whatever, and he said one of the things that you do have to be careful of is that when you fail at something multiple times, let's say you have a hard time holding down a job, and it's because you consistently mess up on like one or a couple of areas, that are very consistent, right? So when you go into like that fifth or sixth job, or whatever it is, you're not, the way that the mind works is that you're not trying to overcome one failure. You're now stacking up the 4 or 5 before it, and that gets in a lot of people's heads, and that's what ultimately holds a lot of people back. Now, I don't really know the answer to that. I am not a psychotherapist, but that is definitely a thing to be aware of. It's something that I've noticed with me for some areas of my life. Like when I think back to it, because even if it's one thing to kind of logic your way and tell yourself that like this thing can't hurt me, or like, oh, I can always be better, or whatever. But your subconscious is pretty strong. We're the back of our minds are always running color commentary. We've talked about this before. It's not too unrelated to imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Where a lot of that is color commentary in the back of your head, where it's not necessarily you. Is that something that I mean, does that make sense? Is that
Yes.
something that you like have come across, or like?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think I mentioned this to you. I thrive on challenge. I thrive
Mm,
on learning, and
for sure.
I don't know. Maybe there's like a deeper thing to that. Maybe it's because I was in situations where I really felt like I was forced to have to adapt and learn and face failure over and over.
Mm,
Or maybe it's because I've faced disappointment so many times. Relatively pretty strong. Like it's not always the best all the
for
time,
sure. Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
really count myself grateful. But I wanted to ask you, like, I guess for someone who, because the fear of failure really prevents us from really taking on things we need to do to get to a certain level or a certain dream that we may be having. And so, what would you say to someone who, uh, yeah, is just experiencing difficulty and like taking that step and, you know, um, really wanting to achieve something, but they fear failing at something? What is, at least for you, what is your, I guess, your thought process? Like, just say you have a big client, big job, opportunity.
It's actually something that's very related to procrastination, because
Yeah.
you procrastinate on something because you've lined up something that you want to do it later, because if I start to take action on it now I'm setting myself up, like, this is something that I could possibly get wrong later. So so then you get to, I got another 10 minutes in bed, or like, I'm going to complete this task first, then, instead of working on this thing that's actually important, that I need to do. Like, that's a big tie-in to procrastination. But as far as like my advice that I would give to anybody, that fears taking action on anything, it's have to take some kind of action.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to do it. Like, when I was so you've known me as like being a very social person, right? You know, some people often say, like, you know, in the town square, will give me like the nickname of like the mayor of town square,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
That's a great name for you. I love that.
But what like a lot of people don't know is, one, I'm highly introverted, and two, one of my greatest fears was talking to other people. Right. When I was first starting to get into business, I'll tell you like how big of a deal it was for me was when I realized that I wanted to get into business. Like 9 out of 10 people in business were also like great salespeople. I was like 19 years old and I literally cried. You know, like my poor
what?
girlfriend had to listen to
No.
me, like, you know, because I was afraid of talking to people.
Yeah.
Talking to
Yes.
strangers, right? You know, but it was something that I intentionally worked on. I read books on it. So the taking action part was like I read books. I observed and I watched people that I perceived as being very extroverted, very social people. I watched what they did, and then when rubber hits the road, like the actions that I took was like I would write down in my journal, okay, like this is my task. I'm going to give a compliment to 10 people on the street that I don't know. Like just random person at Barnes and Noble, random person like at the gas station. Yeah, and
That's so cool.
and then at a certain point I would just and then I would and action doesn't mean that you just have to go all in, right? My first step is just compliment somebody, right? Then the next step was, okay, can I hold a conversation for 1 minute, right? Okay, now that I've held a conversation, for 1 minute, can I gracefully exit this conversation without
Yeah, that's the
sounding like
hardest part.
awkward and weird? Yeah, right. And so like these were all like baby steps, But when it does come to taking action, most of the fear dissipates, or at least doesn't matter anymore after you take that first step. So it's kind of like jumping out of an airplane. The hardest part is jumping out of the airplane, but once you've jumped out, no, you don't have any choice. Like you just
You're in there.
good or ugly, like you are
Yes.
committed now. So that's how I like treated conversations. When like getting into that job, like I don't know what I'm doing on the job, and that's why I'm here to go through training and everything. But like
yes.
I've signed up for it, and I'm going to show up and everything, and we're going to see what happens. I'm going to do my best.
Yeah.
And that's all anybody can expect from themselves. Just small actions, a little bit at a time, little things that make you uncomfortable every time. And it's not a pretty business, but it's really there are very other few options that I can think of.
I think we are definitely people that people turn to, when not just necessarily just success in general, but just for life stuff, and they ask questions like that. And I try to, have grace and compassion because honestly, you're right. Like it's the boring answer, but people want to know, okay, like that's funny, but like really, no, it's
Right,
like
yeah,
actually
yeah.
you really have to just show up and face it,
I
head
have,
on.
I have a random question for you.
Okay.
So
I love questions.
So, being that people come up to you and you have a lot of patience for things, and like, are you the type of person that like in a group scenario, like if somebody wants to take the lead, to like make plans or something like that, you let them do it, but like at the same time, if it all hits the fan and everything. You're the one who ends up taking the reins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that? Yeah.
I'll
yeah.
give it actually like exactly that example
Yeah.
from experience. There was a friend at the time that was hosting their very first like cabin like type of birthday thing, and I knew her to be someone who wasn't very sociable, but I think she was attempting to, and so she wanted something big, and so I was there to support her, and she had the whole thing, and long story short, like it just didn't go well, and she kind of like internalized it a lot, whatever drama was happening that day, and like ended up locking herself in a room because it was just overwhelming, I guess. And so
Oh man.
I ended up um, I ended up doing icebreakers at this cabin party because everyone was like, "Where's the celebrant?" And I'm like, I really try my best though, because I
Sure,
don't want to
yeah.
be that person. But
Right,
sometimes
right.
you have to be that
Right,
person,
right.
and it could be from coping, like, or just like your coping mechanism and just like maintaining peace and stuff. But also because I just have experience, and I've been in a lot of leadership
I
stuff.
think
And
I think you're the type of person that thrive like that excels when under pressure.
yes,
Yeah, like
yeah, yeah,
because
absolutely.
you're very collected, like you don't have a very like and this is one of the things I appreciate about you. Like you're an interesting contrast of like you're not super what's the word that I'm looking for? Like you're not very you're not a super obvious personality, but you do have a certain control about you, a certain a cadence and groundedness that I think a lot you attract a lot of people to you in that
Oh,
way.
thank you. Well, my brain's like,
Yeah, no, for
yeah,
sure,
yeah, no, that's
absolutely. But
great to know.
yeah, but
Thank
while
you.
being collected on the
Yeah.
outside, like that's crazy. That's crazy for a
Yeah.
lot of people.
But I mean, like, what doesn't work with that, I guess, type of, I guess, personality that I have, or way I'm able to like keep myself collected, is that you say that I work well under pressure. It's most challenging when you're not in pressure. Just say if you have a certain project you want to get done, you have like, things you want to do on your to-do list, but nobody's necessarily forcing you to do it, pressuring you to do it. It's really you and yourself. And at the end of the day, it's just you and yourself. Like, you go to sleep by yourself, and
I
that's where it gets a little tricky with me.
I read this random quote from somebody. I don't remember the name, but the dude said that the ingredients of success is is a really I'm paraphrasing. He
Sure.
said the ingredients of success is a really important project and not quite enough time.
Wow. That's every day, man. I have 2 hours to work
Right.
on this
Yeah.
project, and then I go
You
to
just got to
bed.
throw something together. Yeah.
That's so true.
But
Yeah.
that pressure it brings the best out of you.
I really see failure as an opportunity. And I posted on my Instagram not too long ago. I don't know why I just found out about Tony Robbins. He said, like, failure, what was it? What was it? Failure is just like something like a result. Like, like, it's only failure if you just think of it as that. If you were to see it as an opportunity, it wouldn't be so much as a failure at all. It'd be an opportunity for you to grow, an
Yes, yeah,
opportunity to
yeah.
see it in a different lens. And so, I mean, not to say I've never came to that point where I'm like, wow, I'm a failure. Even like there'll be loved ones who'll tell you that stuff, and it really gets into your head. But that's why I really, really, really hone in on, or highlight, just the importance of, if it's really important to you, you will take the time to evaluate, like, is that even true?
Sure,
All
sure.
of the things that may be telling you that you can't do a certain thing.
So there was so about like having failures in any given point, where you sit there and you just kind of evaluate yourself. You evaluate your life, and where you're like, oh, am I really a failure? Like, I've come into this point, I'm like, 25, 27 or 30 or whatever age that you're at. It's funny. It doesn't matter what age you're at. You always look at your life as a whole, being like, I am a failure. Like, I'm 18.
Right.
All right, it's the end
Yeah.
of my life, right?
Yes.
And you look at your life where you're like, oh man, what have I really done? But there's this story of this guy. He asks this renowned historian or whatever, and he asks him this question. He says, what do you think the ramifications of the French Revolutionary War is? And of course, Revolutionary War was, hundreds of years ago, right? And he says to him, he says, well, I think it's still too early to tell. And I think that's how a lot of people should look at the point that they are in their lives. Like you're only a little ways in. Like it's you know, are you a failure or not? I don't know, but it's probably still too early to tell.
Wow.
Far too early to tell.
I don't know why our stuff is not working today. Maybe we're just speaking too much facts or I can't handle it. Okay, so what I remember what I spoke about. Okay, yeah, I highly recommend people our age really spend time if they have grandparents or even just at a senior center because these people are of experience. And I think that's why I really, really enjoy I guess just anyone with wisdom in general because of their experience and it reminds you of like well maybe I do have a little bit more time than I think because you can hear from their mistakes what they thought as failures what they thought of success. Who was it that like didn't get successful till like they were like in their 30s? I mean I'm sure there's countless people that didn't reach I guess the level of success until later on in their life. And I always think of our life as like just the tip of, a shoestring,
Yeah.
because it's just, there's so much more to it.
I,
Yeah.
I do have to point out something in that line of thinking. You are absolutely right. There's a lot of people that made their mark much later, and they're known for like Tolkien. He started writing Lord of the Rings at like 40. You have Colonel Sanders from KFC, right? He sold the rights at like 70, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like that part of you, you still got time. You got a lot of time.
On the
But
flip side.
but on the flip side, you have to remember to live your life. Like, you can't think of your life. You can't think of your life strictly as like a journey, a pilgrimage or whatever. Like that. There's an end, that you're trying to get to, right? So there's this guy Alan Watts, right? He's this British guy. He helped bring Eastern philosophy out to the West, right? And so what he says, he's basically like, the universe as we know it is there's no point to it really. Like it's largely playful. Like it's not, the universe is not trying to get somewhere, right? He says life can be best used in analogy with music. So, we say that you play music. You don't work music. Same thing with dancing. You don't you don't dance to end up in in a certain part of the room. The whole point of dancing is the dance.
Right.
But we don't see that reflected in our society and in our lives. Because what is it that you do? You go to you get sent to kindergarten. From kindergarten, you get sent to first grade. First grade, congratulations. Now you get to second, and so on and so forth. And then you go into college, and now you're done with college, and you go on to join the world. And all this time, you're working towards something. You're working, and you're trying to get to that thing, right?
Yes.
And then what eventually happens is that and then you work in some job where you're selling insurance or something like that, and and then they have some marks that you have to make, and you're going to make that, right? And we miss the whole point all the way along. You get to about age 40 and you say, wow, I've made it, I'm there, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever it is that you're chasing,
Right.
and then you get there and you don't feel much different from how you always felt. Right? If you take a look at the senior citizens, right, people who lived for their retirement, who collected all those savings, right, and then by the time they're age 65, 70, they get sent to old people's community, and they don't have much energy left, rot in some old people's community, right? So we. Then the point that he makes is, we think of we think of life as a journey, as a pilgrimage, as a place that has a serious point and end, and the whole point of life is to get to that end. But we end up cheating ourselves the whole way along because life is a musical thing. You were supposed to sing or to dance while the music was being played.
Stop doing that, Eric. Saying poetic stuff like that is just, oh my god, speaks to my soul. That's so true.
But you know, these are the conversations, you know, that we have where we enjoy a cup of coffee or a tea, you know, at the coffee shop with an old friend, or you know, or meeting new friends along the way.
Yes.
You know, enjoying time with people that you know, all of us only have limited time with each other in various aspects. You know, taking care of ourselves, and you know, watching the people, the community around us, taking care of those things, remembering to enjoy your life like now while you have it. In Stoic philosophy, they have this idea that you know, a lot of it is driven by the understanding of death, right? And they want you to find meaning in life because it is limited, right? But they don't want you to think all the time that death is something that is going to happen to you, or it's something in the future that you need to prepare for. They say, no, you're dying every day, because the time that passes belongs to death. So the hours that I, you know, spent watching TV or whatever it is, or I spent on the couch or whatever it is, I died those 3 hours.
Wow.
They're not coming back.
Wow.
Right. So all of the time, you know, you sit there and you evaluate what it is you're doing on a day-to-day basis. How are you designing your life today? Not some future what's going to happen when I'm successful. One day I'm just going to stop being afraid of things, or you know, one day I'm just going to know what I'm doing, right? Like that never happens. And then if you ask anybody who has reached a high level of success, they are almost always depressed because they worked so hard to get to that point.
Yes.
And now what do I do with my life?
Right.
My life was the same the whole way, you know, front and back.
Yeah, it's really that hard balance of being like, I have time, but today could be my last day, you know?
Yeah.
And I want to hear your thought process. Just say that you have, like, you went to the doctor and you're waiting for certain results. It could be positive or negative, right? And you have, like, you know, a few weeks until then. You don't know. What is your thought process through that? You know, whether it be positive or negative, how are you reacting to that?
I did go to a doctor to get a checkup on something that that I thought could have been life threatening, and I was waiting on like the test to come through and everything, and you know, it turns out I was fine. But man, that was probably like the longest, like week and a half or whatever,
sure.
right? And you know, and I was thinking about these things, and it's, you know, the immediate thing is you know, it's kind of, it's for a second it feels real to you, like it seems like very immediate, right? You know, but there was also the thing in the back of my head. Was like I was kind of alone during that whole thing, because it hasn't been proven that, you know, there's actually a problem. So I told like one person that like this is something I'm dealing, you know, purely for my sanity, right? But yeah, as far as the things that I was thinking about, I mean, like I think about death a lot, right? You know, and so like a lot of it was, you know, I've designed my life in a way that if I only had a few, like couple of weeks to live, I would not change that much in my life.
That's so good.
You know,
Yes.
because the things that I've designed my life around are based on the things that I value in my life.
Yes.
So like the things that I value in my life are essentially, the people that are important to me, like the community around me, my family, my friends, and then doing things because they're interesting to me, doing things because they help people,
Yes.
bringing value to people,
Yes.
right? And in all ways, like even the small little ways, right? Like you don't have to, like people think that you have to start like a huge foundation, or you have to move to Africa and build wells and shit and everything. Good for you.
Purposeful work, yes.
Good for you if you're doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking that in the slightest.
Yeah.
But like you can do a lot of good with just the 5, 6, 10 people directly around you. He's a YouTuber, right?
Yeah.
This is before he became famous, right? And it was really funny. It was one of those. It's funny to me because that's where you realize the age difference. Because at the time he was like 22 or something like that, and like 21 or 22, and I'm like in like my mid 30s or whatever it is, right? Like early 30s, and then and eventually, and I talked to him like the same way that I would talk to you, just as a normal person, as like a normal adult, right? And he eventually like hit me back, because he forgets sometimes, and he's like, "Yo, so Eric, how many people have you dated?" And I was like, serious relationships, maybe 5 or something like that. And he's like 21. He's like, "Oh, I didn't know Eric was a player." And he's like, and everything. And I was like, hold up. I've just had more time in you, okay?
Wow, that's
But
so
yeah,
funny.
like those are always late the late night
talk.
conversations.
You're like
late
half
night-
asleep,
Yeah.
half awake, and you're just like
Yeah.
blurt whatever. That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
It always cracks me up.
Yeah, just thinking about what you said. Oh yeah, so when I was listening to our last podcast years ago, a lot of what we're saying is pretty much the same, but so much has changed within this time.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show how much importance is in values and like the simple things that you value
Yes.
the most,
Yeah.
right? Like our jobs have changed.
For sure.
Our
For sure.
social life has changed.
Yeah. A
Our
lot has happened in the
environment
last
has
4 years.
So much. And but I think internally we're pretty much the same people because we saw the importance of, life is inevitable. Things will change all the time, but what stays the same is who you are on the inside, and the things that you, I guess, always go back to that bring you back to a state of, gratitude, essentially, because you know where you've come from, where it all started. And I think that's a big key also to success is just like knowing where you came from, and where, dang, Montgomery Village.
It's. I think it is important to.
Oh, wait. Just wait. I think they're passing through.
Yes.
Is where all the action's at.
Yeah.
No, you don't want to be in this.
Never.
Oh my god.
And I mean, there's a police station being built down the street, so that's not gonna help either.
No.
Or the main street, so I get it. Okay.
Wait.
Yeah, closing that window definitely helped.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
not that itchy anymore. It's still a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not that itchy anymore.
Yeah, probably because you're sitting down too.
Okay.
Go ahead, Eric.
Oh no, I was just saying. It's important to remember where you came from. Remember who you are. But the tricky thing is like, you do have to check yourself every so often.
Yes.
The one thing that most people never do is they wonder, what if I'm wrong? So every so often it is good. I mean, again, like I've been journaling for years and everything. Like we, both you and me are big into that. It's nice to have a record of, all the people that you've been throughout your life. It's helpful information. and sometimes like you have to sit there and check like, okay, like, is this still the person that I want to be or that I need and want to be? Does this make sense for my life? What has changed? Like, okay, nothing has changed, but my life is this way. Like, how do I guide this like a little bit differently? It does require a revisiting, a conscious revisiting of because it's kind of like, you want to remember where you came from and everything. Well, it's like, well, I don't know where I came from.
Right.
That's a legitimate issue to think about.
Or you've been like living someone else's life this whole time, and you're like, oh,
Yeah. I think so. You sent me a question of one of the things that changed for the last 4 years, well, just people in general, right? And one of the things is, and if we're talking about the last 4 years, what the question really is, what has changed after the context of the pandemic, right? That's really what what you have to address. And I think a lot of people during that time realized that they were doing their life they were doing a lot of things that they thought they should be doing, that they did not really need to, which was brought in by different things of different factors of being close with death, not being able to go to work, so now you got to figure out what to do with your time, having the world be turned upside down and then realizing you were still okay after it. All these different aspects, it flipped what everybody thought of how their life should be.
One of my biggest anxieties coming out of the pandemic was like going back to pre-pandemic, where go back into like the busy life and like
sure
that was one of my biggest anxieties, because although it was tragic what happened during the pandemic, I think it also served a great purpose in like everyone's life in some way. And so it's definitely something you don't want to take lightly. That was also an opportunity to reevaluate our lives and just how we interact with people and how we saw careers and everything. And so I agree.
We came out on the other side of it and realized that so I was writing notes down, just remembering things that were happening back at that time, and it's I know we don't have a lot of time left, so I'll try to wrap it up real quick. But I mean, it was a crazy time when you think about it, because you had it was like basically a year collectively indoors. So people's social lives were turned upside down. People's work lives were turned upside down. Just in the United States alone, 500,000 people died over the course of that year and a half, and which is more people than how many U.S. soldiers died in the Second World War. Like putting that into perspective, there were rumors of mass graves. I remember there was a Coast Guard ship that sailed into the port of New York. That was a ship called Mercy, and it was a hospital ship with an extra 1,000 beds in it to help the overflow. But what ended up happening is, is as great of a tragedy as it was, those mass graves weren't used. The ship Mercy did not need to use its extra beds, and we came out on the other side of of an apocalypse. What we would have said, it was an apocalypse that was that in name only. And we come out to the other side, and you might be worried about going back to that life, but that life will never come back again, because the world has changed so much since then, and some of it for the good, as one would hope that any terrible event, you want it to change for the good. So I know that's always like a tricky thing to think or talk about, like when you're talking about tragedy, because tragedy does inevitably shape not just society, but even on the individual scale, like the loss of somebody close to you, it does steer your life a little bit, but you still get to decide what that means.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's all significant if you make it to be,
Yeah,
meaningful.
you still have control over how you're
it.
going to make the meaning of that come out. Yeah,
Absolutely.
at all times.
Wow. Well, we can go on and on and on and on and on about this. But I think we definitely put in so much of good words. And I think I'll end on, for me, my personal note, closing out the topic of success and failure. I've said this recently. You have to be like an active learner every day.
Yes.
That helps you through failure and that helps you through success. Like I still have a long way. Like there are certain things I definitely want to achieve and I'm not there yet, but I'm still very open to just learning in general. That's how I've obtained what I have today, Eric as well. And so it's not until we're open to learning and open to being wrong where we are able to get on the other side of whatever we're battling, So yeah, I just really encourage, like you said, the moment that you knew that you had to be like all these other salesmen to reach a certain thing, to be successful, you had to get to work, you had to read, you had to, those things that, like we were saying earlier, like we've been having a lot of glitches with our equipment and that's what they don't see. But I mean, that didn't stop us. We still continue. We try to make solutions. We try to figure out what we can do next. And so we just got to keep it moving, and not
Absolutely.
to say we'll never have bad days. But if you didn't have bad days, you really, really have anything to refer to compare to,
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's basically it. Well, thank you, Eric, once again. Thank you guys for listening. If you made it this far, I've been craving conversations like this, and just I get so much insight from my friends, and I'm just really grateful to be surrounded by people who are just really invested in growing and learning about this beautiful and at times very uncertain life. But I think when you're surrounded by people who are just interested in learning, it makes it worthwhile and really more fun. But yeah, thank you guys once again. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to us, liking this, sharing it with someone you think would gain value if you're in the DMV area. We meet in person with any young adults that are looking for a community, a safe space. We try our best to provide opportunities for you guys to network with other people and really also just have a great, intentional, mindful moment, whether it be through arts or other certain events. And if you've gained value from this and would love to support our future endeavors and plans that we have for you guys in this community and just bring some positive things into this world, please do consider becoming a donor if you'd like and are willing. There's different options you can do, and we'll leave all of the description or all of the information on that below. But thank you, Eric, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
My boy, we have such great conversations, and I'm really looking forward to like our next ones and where life will take us in the next years. But we won't take that long to have another podcast. I'm sure we'll have another one in the near future. But is there anything you want to share with the world? Any concluding thoughts or maybe slight plugins? You do everything, so I have no idea like what you could be doing right now that you want to tell the world. So
I don't know. No plugins.
Okay.
Whatever you're doing, like you're gonna be all right.
You're good.
You're gonna be all right.
Good.
Like
Yeah.
your demographic, you got a lot of time.
Yeah.
You got a lot of time.